Hey everyone, welcome to the Lockdown Living podcast, where every episode we take some time to look at the unique circumstances we find ourselves in and how we can best embrace the day, make the most of the moment, and live for God in all we do. Now, we're really fortunate today to have three amazing guests. We've got Nemi from our Welling venue, we have got Tony from our Elton venue, and Katherine from our Sidcup 6 o'clock venue. And so a great spread from across the church and some amazing things that they're going to bring to us today in our discussion. So great to have you guys here. You doing okay?
Yeah, really good.
We're enjoying Nemi's curtains. I'm a fan. I think they're a great addition to this Zoom call. And he's thought long and hard about where to go in the house. And I think you've chosen well, Nemi, with that background. For those who are listening rather than watching, it's basically the greatest curtains you've ever seen. A lot of leaves, a bit of turquoise. I don't really know how to explain them, but they look great. Well, we're going to jump straight in. And let me just say, it's the first one we've done. We're recording over Zoom. So if someone's Wi-Fi cuts out or the audio sounds robotic, it's because that seems to happen all the time when we do these things, and we're just going to try and roll with it. So just go with it, and hopefully we'll manage to make it through to the end. So today we are talking about mission. Now, Jesus, before his ascension, we talked about the ascension recently, when he returned to heaven. Before he ascended to heaven, he gave us the Great Commission, our purpose, our meaning as Christians. And he said this in Matthew 28, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." Now, that's the mission statement. That's what we're all about. That's what we're living, and that hasn't changed during lockdown. But a lot of other things have changed. And Nemi, let's start with you. I've seen you during some of these church prayer meetings and different Zoom calls we've had, and you're usually sat in a chair with something like 18 children climbing on your back. And then you talk about doing like banking with, all these rich people, I don't know, in Switzerland or something, and then homeschooling and then prayer. And I'm like, I don't know how your life works, Nemi. And I'm just interested, amongst the kind of the climbing kids and the bankers and all those things in between. What does evangelism even look like for you in this season, which must seem a little bit crazy?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that about my family. Just to put it out there, I think I still got one wife the last time I checked. But yeah, thank you for that. I think it's been very, very interesting, I guess, for everyone. I mean, I'm not going to use that word unprecedented again, because I think I had it too many times. But the reality is that, I guess as us as Christians, our purpose doesn't change, right? Regardless of what situation we find ourselves. And so even in lockdown, even in this period of, we're incubating in our homes, we still have to be who we are, who God has called us to be. And so, again, it's doing the same thing. I mean, the interesting thing also is that it's sometimes a bit easier now, because now you can just send a text or just forward over and roll over the church, invite other people. Whereas sometimes it could have been awkward, maybe especially with work colleagues, when you send it to them. I mean, we've been interacting on Zoom and other things. So just slipping in one as though it was by error, you sent it to them to say, "Hey, by the way, check out my church, on Sunday if you're free, get in and join in and stuff." So it doesn't take away anything, but we're just doing it slightly differently, that we don't have the kind of face-to-face type of conversation.
Yeah, you're right. There's some really great, unique opportunities. I like how you say just by accident, it's like, oh yeah, just, if you're interested, here's a little link, check it out. You're right. There's some unique opportunities, and we'll probably explore that a bit more in a sec. But Katherine, why don't you just tell us a bit about what you've been up to? Because you work for Fusion, and usually you're based with students and focusing on sharing the gospel with them and connecting them into the local church. But things have changed quite a bit for you in the last few weeks, haven't they? What's been going on?
Yeah, so with Fusion, our focus has always been like doing student work in our local church really well, and then helping other churches do that really well. So we're doing it locally to then equip wider. It's always been looking outwards. How can we serve the wider church to do student work really well? But we decided when the UK locked down that actually we've been training students in how to do small groups really well. We can easily put our training online. So we should probably just open up our training to all Christians, so not just students. So I've been training loads of people. Today we had our little milestone of over 1,000 registrants for our training. And I've just been loving meeting people from actually all over the world. We've had people plug in from the US, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, all over, and of course all over the UK as well, and just getting to have conversations with them about how do we do online small groups really well. I really believe they're the heartbeat of the local church, and they're the places where mission and discipleship are outworked. So let's do them really well in this season. And then we do other stuff about like, how do you share your faith online, and hosting discussions around that. So it's been a really exciting month. And I think I sort of thrive on that change, and I thrive in the like pioneering. I know lots of people feel very overwhelmed by the amount of change, so I do recognize that, and definitely there are people on my team that feel that. But for me, I've been just loving the change and the opportunity to innovate and think of new ways to share my faith.
Amazing. So it sounds like you guys are doing a great job, and you must hear all sorts of stories coming from different people, like you say, not just across the UK but across the world. Is there one in particular, or a theme of stories that would just kind of stir us with a bit of faith as we kind of head into this conversation about mission? Is there anything that you could share with us, a particular story?
Yeah, I mean, I feel so blessed that every day I'm hearing stories of people exploring who Jesus is and trying church. And I think loads of people have heard stories about people trying church for the first time because it's online and it's easy. So people are trying it. But the main theme, I think specifically for young people, is people that were on the fringe of church and weren't that engaged are now stepping into the heart of community. And I'm just so encouraged by that. The ones that were sort of on the outside, not really involved in this time, are bored and have realized that everything that was distracting them from the main thing, from God, isn't important and isn't there anymore. The friends that they used to go clubbing with or whatever, actually they're not the ones that are there for them. The people who are consistent and loving are the Christians. And I just love that story is repeated all over the UK and definitely here as well. So
that's so encouraging. It's a real kind of faith stirrer to hear those things, because obviously that's what we want to see with our own friends and in our church. So it's good to hear that. Now, Tony, you're someone who I know is really passionate about evangelism. You talk about it loads. It's been a big part of your story and in your life. And I know you're a real inspiration to many, including myself, in the way that you kind of pioneer with that through the highs and lows that anyone who does evangelism experiences. And I know, definitely. Nemi's on board. You got some cheerleaders out there, Tony. I'm holding back from making jokes. I say a lot of harsh things about you, so it's good to say occasional compliments, because like I say, all jokes aside, you're a real inspiration to me and many, in how you fight this kind of battle for us to keep evangelism on the radar. And as someone who, I know we've had lots of conversations and we could go in lots of directions, but what would you say are some of the things that you're wrestling with and thinking through when it comes to evangelism during lockdown?
Well, it's definitely a new season. firstly, I went on to one of Katherine's sessions, which was brilliant. The fusion stuff, the training. No wonder 1,000 people have gone on to it. It is really helpful. And I gained some things that I've tried from that. But I think my feeling, obviously, and I'm sure most of us know, is that there's an openness at the moment that there's never been before. You know, I think the country has often been known to be a bit cynical about stuff, but we're all in the same boat right now. You know, we're all facing some form of difficulty or uncertainty, whether it's about jobs or health, things like that, or we're overworked. But all of those things in mind, people can't really get away from the thought that, I wonder if this is going to affect me or someone I love to the point of dying. And everyone's having those thoughts. So there's a commonality there across the nation. And so it brings an openness. You can be in a queue. I don't go shopping very often, but if I was to, people who are in queues are asking those questions. And in our neighbourhood, the road that I live in, we set up a WhatsApp group, and loads of people have done that, loads. And it's just people are more open. If you tried to have done that 2 months ago, they would have laughed you out. You know, they would have just gone, what are you on about? And now everyone's connecting. I know, John, you've been out going mad at 8 o'clock every Thursday evening, and everyone's watching you and joining in. And so there's this wonderful opening and openness. Like there's empathy, there's compassion towards one another, which is really brilliant. You know, I've never lived, you know, I'm just a little bit older than you, John, but I've never lived in a time where there's so much openness and compassion towards one another. So that's a clear and easy observation. And I think that's really good. And one of the challenges that I think about a lot is, well, how do I move from being involved in community to trying to introduce them to Jesus? And it's a challenge. How do I go about doing that? But also the other part of the challenge is I need to be patient, because you can quickly think, right, the coronavirus, the world's never going to be the same. Suddenly there is going to be this amazing revival overnight. And I think, you know, God is God, and nothing has changed in that sense over the thousands of years, you know, and he will save someone when he chooses to save someone. But I want to find out, and I'm impatient. That's the sort of character that I have, I guess. So I'm wanting to learn. I need to be patient. I need to find ways of connecting with people that's more than, you know, just the normal things that everybody else is talking about. And so it leads me on to expectation, because when this did start, I was like, I think I'm a bit like Katherine, it's all going to happen tonight, you know, before we leave this building or before we go home, as I walk down the road, someone will get saved. But and it doesn't often quite work like that, or rarely work like that. But so expectation is really important. So we've just had Easter Sunday, and I thought this is going to be a key time, and I still believe it is a key time. But it's managing our expectations. That doesn't mean lack of faith. It means let's see what God is doing, and not be like that balance, right, between faith and being realistic and being honest, not realistic negatively, being honest. So I'm fighting that. I'm working that through and thinking, how does that look for us as individuals? You know, in our world, when we've invited, as Nemi was talking about, it's easier to send out a message to 20 people and think I've invited them and 3 of them have looked, and therefore 2 of them should get saved this week. You know, that it doesn't quite, or it might not materialize like that. So it's working through and talking through those expectations so that we don't get disappointed, because I do think there's something big on the horizon.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it's funny, isn't it? I think during this season, probably our different personalities will show in all sorts of different ways. And I know, as you said, Tony, you and Katherine, and I don't know Nemi quite so well, so you can let me know if you're similar, Nemi, but it's this kind of, and I think it's something that a lot of evangelists carry, who you're like, there's that excitement of what could God be doing now? And in many ways, that's really healthy. But as you said, I loved your honesty there, Tony, just we can have that expectation, but the problem is real life happens, and then kind of we've been talking about this and what's going to happen, and then the day comes or the moment passes, and it doesn't work out always as we expected. And as you say, it's still trying to have that faith, but it's also what should I be having faith for? Should I be having faith that by the time lockdown ends in 3 weeks that the whole of the nation shall be saved, or what? And I know deep down, like we even though we should say, oh yeah, of course, we know that, you know, that's very unlikely to be the case, but we want to be expectant. And I think Nemi raised a point about texting people. I think my experience has been that it's never been easier to invite people to anything. Like, for example, like you, Nemi, you know, you've got colleagues who might live miles from the church, who they're never going to come, but they can watch our online service, and you're like, this is amazing. Like, I have friends who live in different cities who would never come to our church, but they've watched our Sunday meeting. It's amazing. I love that. But whilst it seems to be easier to invite than ever, it also seems easier for people to flake than ever, and because there's such low commitment, which is what draws people, because it's not like turning up to the church building on a Sunday. But I don't know about you, I invited all these people to Easter Sunday, were like, yeah, I'm going to be there. And loads of them, I'm like, I haven't heard anything back from them since that Sunday service happened. And you're like, the numbers were kind of similar to the week before, so either a load of our church people didn't come, or a load of our friends who said they were going to come didn't show. And we can kind of ignore those stats and not talk about that, but it's real life, isn't it? And I think we need to be honest and be real about what we're experiencing. So I don't know about you guys, if any of you, Nemi or Katherine, like that kind of expectation versus reality, how are you grappling with that at the moment? Nemi, what about you to begin with? How are you finding that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reality, isn't it? You know, how do you remain thankful and faithful for the little that you've seen, whilst still holding this kind of big expectation of what you want to experience? I mean, you read the Bible and you see all these wonderful promises. Like, well, we would like to see these promises now. And sometimes it's almost like the lived out daily experience, it's almost completely different from the promises of God. So it's a real tension. I think it's there. And so for me, is how do I continue to excite myself just beyond what I see, but also to continue reflecting. You know, I often tell myself to say, look, my life should not be conditioned just on my experience, because frankly, if it's my experience, then the church would have closed its doors, because I don't know how many people I've helped to come to know Jesus, or I have personally been involved in their lives and come to see Jesus. But when I read the Bible, it kind of talks about, no, look, you will bear fruit. You know, if you abide in me, you will bear fruit. You know, you will see these things happen. And so it's like, one of the things that I've used to help myself is, whilst I want to see my reality, and again, there's no denying my reality, at the same time, I want to hang on to say, look, this is my reality, but I want to put my focus on God's reality, on what God's promises say. So yeah, there are disappointments, and I'm not seeing enough of what I expect to see fruits in my own life and people around me, but I don't want my reality to define how I see God. I want to always try to elevate my eyes, to keep my eyes on God's promises. So that's how, you know, again, I don't know if it's very helpful, but that's how I tend to manage attention, to accept my reality, but at the same time, not keep my eyes down on my reality, but continue to look onto God's promises and God's faithfulness.
Yeah, that's good. What are you thinking, Katherine?
Yeah, I mean, I think about this type of stuff a lot, and we're all shaped by our pasts and especially how we became Christians. And I think because I wasn't raised a Christian and became a Christian because someone invited me to church, and it was such a like God-ordained moment, that I feel like I've just seen something of what God might be doing. And so I find it very easy to balance the tension of, I don't always see it, but I know he can do it, and I know he will do it because he has done it for me, and I know he's going to do it for more, because he doesn't just want to save me, he wants to save so many. So I can hold that tension quite well, I think. And that's the Christian life. A lot of it is just holding attention and living life in attention of, you've said it, God, it's been proclaimed, it's a promise, but I don't see it and I don't feel it and I don't know it. How do I know that you are a God who gives peace, but I don't feel peace? So how do I live in that tension? I think there's lots of moments in our lives where we feel that, and it's probably the same for mission right now. And so I would naturally go to being excited and being like, let's innovate, let's create. But I also definitely feel that this time is challenging, and it does have its specific challenges. Like, a lot of how I shared my faith before was in the spontaneous and in the unplanned, in the informal, because I think mission is led by the Spirit. And so a lot of that happens in the after like church chats, or I've just randomly bumped into this person and I didn't think I was going to see them. I saw a student crying on the street and ended up chatting to them. Didn't know that was going to happen. And those moments can't happen now in the same way, unless, like you said, Tony, you're in a supermarket queue thinking, oh, actually, maybe I've been put in this queue in this place for such a time as this for this reason. Though I haven't had any supermarket evangelism.
Yeah, normally people just trying to avoid you, don't they? Like, you've got coronavirus, they're like, stay away.
Yeah. I'm like, hello, please chat to me.
Yeah.
I had that with my neighbour today. I was like leant out the window, like doing the little clap, and saw her. I went out the window so I could actually see my neighbour over the bush, and then it was just the most awkward interaction ever. I was like, hello, how are you? She was like, hi, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I'm really good. How's your day? And she just didn't want to chat. So awkward anyway. But yes, I think this time comes with the specific challenges, but the fear or the worry that I would have about feeling like a lot of disappointment in this time is that we would become bitter, and in that bitterness be disabled and not do anything. So we'd just not do anything. We'd be like, well, we don't see anything, nothing's happening. And the reality is, if we don't invite, we're never going to see anyone become a Christian. Well, we might actually. God saves, and he can save without us, but he wants to use us, and we're the ones that have this invitation in our hands. So yeah, I think it's a cycle, isn't it? If you're like, I'm really disappointed, I never see anything, I'm never going to invite again, so then of course you're not going to see your friends become Christians. So I think it's,
and then yeah, of course. And Katherine, you earlier today, even you were telling me about how you were praying about people you can invite to the Alpha course. So the church is running a course called Alpha, where you can explore the Christian faith. And for the first time ever, we're doing it online. If you're interested in finding out, visit newcom.church/alpha. And Katherine, you were saying this morning about how you were praying about people to invite, and someone came into your mind who you thought, wow, I've hardly ever met them before, but what can it harm just sending them a link and saying this might be of interest to you? And you were pleasantly surprised that very quickly they responded and said that they were up for it. And it shows that actually there's maybe more of an openness, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. Like, that's just a text message to you. But I don't know if you just want to expand on that story just quickly, because I think that filled me with a lot of hope.
Yeah, I mean, I just was praying specifically for names. If you're in our Wednesday prayer meeting, which you can find out more about on our website as well if you click on newcom.church/connect. But yeah, I just said sometimes I pray specifically if God would drop names into my head or faces or whatever, and I just thought of this person, so invited them, and they said, oh, this is the perfect timing, thank you so much. Just it's the sign I wanted, signed up. But then I invited someone else who sort of has been open here and there, who then said, yeah, I've watched the service, I'm not interested in religion anymore, I'm not going to come, thanks. So
and it's great to hear you share that, because I think that shows both, because that's the reality, isn't it? Sometimes people who we think, they'd be really open to doing Alpha aren't, and you think, what's going on? And then other people who you think there's no chance, but what the heck, let's just try it. And they are open, yeah.
Sorry, I think in that moment I did feel disappointment, and I felt embarrassment as well. Like, I felt embarrassed that they had said no, which then led me to thinking, why do I feel embarrassed? I have done what I was called to do. I have invited well. I have loved this person through my invitation. I haven't put pressure on them. I've invited very softly. That is all God has asked me to do. And it is not in my strength that they would say yes. And actually, the times I get disappointed about people not becoming Christians is because I think I've put on a really good event and I think I deserve people to become Christians, which is not right at all, because it's not about us. It's not about me. And I think I'm learning more and more to live that out, to see salvation as a gift. And to, when my friends or students or people around me become Christians, seeing that as like a beautiful gift, but not like the thing that I'm controlling. Actually, all I can do is invite. Sometimes people will say yes, sometimes they'll say no, and that's okay.
No, you're right, Katherine. I mean, I think we need to get to that place where we are comfortable with disappointments. It's just the reality. I mean, again, Jesus never, he didn't hide this from us. He told us clearly, some just wouldn't accept. Some just wouldn't like you. And I think it's a place there where we need to get to where, you talk to someone and, either they shut you down, they tell you to shut up. Maybe they're not going to be that rude, hopefully. But they say they don't want to hear. It's okay. It's part of, maybe we don't use the word persecution a lot because we think of persecution as being where there is a bad regime and just someone that wants to kill all Christians and all of that. But this is what it means to be persecuted, that you are in the office, you speak out about Jesus, you speak out about your faith, you share your faith with someone, and rather than your expectation is that people are going to go, whoa, yes, I would like to find out more about Jesus. Instead, what you find is people shutting you down. And I think as Christians, we need to come to that place of accepting that as part of the mission. That the mission is one where you would hear people say yes and others say no. Yeah. People would accept and others would shut you down. And so we need to get to that point of accepting all. It is what we're called to do. Our role, as Katherine was saying, is to just open our mouth and share. And whatever comes out of it, in fact, I'm even thinking more now to say persecution is a blessing. That disappointments are a blessing because God knows about it. He's seeing your effort. So we shouldn't always look for just the outcome that, 10 people got saved because I spoke to 10 of them. And then that means, it's I've done well, or, God is so pleased with me. God is pleased with us. The command is to go and preach, to go and make disciples, to go and speak to people. We don't force them. We don't twist people. And so I think that disappointment should be part of the daily life of a Christian. We should accept disappointments, I think.
Can I just jump in there? Because a no might be a no today, but next week, next month, next year could well be a yes. Because I like Katherine, came to Jesus later on in life. I was in my 20s, so it was a long time ago, but didn't grow up in church, but I was saying no, and then I said yes. And so I think part of the journey we're in, because let's get back to this season we're in, there are some great opportunities, and I do believe God is a time of sowing, and it will be a time of reaping, and is a time of reaping. And it's like I'm prepared for a no, because next week when that person thinks about it, or next month or next year when they have a crisis or something, I want to be the God person they come to and say, that conversation you had with me 1 year ago or whenever, tell me again what that was all about. Because, there are disappointments, but God's word, as you said, Nemi, never changes. The parable of the sower, some fell on the path, some on rocky ground, and some grew up strong, that's the Bible. So we can expect that, and he will save people. And I love it, the occasions that I've been involved with that. So I don't want those, but they're going to come, but we're doing something. So I think it's more about, like, for me and you and the everyday Christian in our lives today in this season is, I'm going to live my best life. So I know of a few teachers that they're not working as in going to school every day. So they just put a little note in a few doors. Hey, if you need a bit of help with your kids, I can give a couple of hours a week. And it's like you're showing the love of God to someone. It opens conversations at different times. And there'll be other things, other acts of kindness that are going on all over. And you don't have to be a Christian to do acts of kindness, but there is something about it. We're showing something of the love of God. So when we come out of this season, we've built some relationships, because that's the trouble for a lot of us Christians. The longer you've been a Christian, the more out of touch you are with your everyday person. You know, we're in our little bubble. And here's a great opportunity. I'm going to make some friendships. I'm going to take a few risks. I'm going to send a few texts. I might even put on an evening called Stories of Hope, where you invite people in and share stories, and it might flop and a couple might come. But the point is, we might have a few no's, but who knows what's going to happen in 1, 2, 5 years' time when they're suddenly getting baptized. And they say, when the coronavirus hit, someone said this to me, that person did that for me. And then I put 2 and 2 together. And because it is, as Katherine said, it's the work of the Holy Spirit. And Katherine makes a really good point, that your very best efforts are just nonsense. You know, Katherine's really good at presenting the gospel. But if God's not doing a work in that person's life, well, you know, it's no better than mine. You know, and so it's the work of the Holy Spirit. We just got to work with that, you know. And I think is one of the things we need to do at this time is think. Right, and not imagine, because I know I'm like bull in a china shop sometimes. I think it's all going to happen next week. But what I need to do is think about the individuals. How do I connect? How can I make that small connection? So I think that's as a church, as Christians, we need to be thinking, how do I make those little, like Katherine, I know a couple of times been in different meetings where Katherine said something and says, and she even said it tonight, like, think of that one person. And that's such a simple step. You know, I can think, I can pray, I can send a text, and how did you find it? So there's some simple steps that we can make in this season, and then it's up to God, isn't it?
Definitely. I think it's such a helpful way to kind of wrap up the conversation is those two things of, we could have had some theological discussion, some big picture discussion about, you know, is revival going to come during coronavirus? Is revival going to come after? The truth is we don't know. God's ways are his ways. And it may be, obviously, we'd love to see many people coming to know Jesus. And we want to pray for revival. But as much, if not more than we pray for this kind of a theoretical revival, actually, it's, as you were saying, all of you, it's about thinking about the one and thinking about today. We're not going to spend forever thinking about what will happen in 21, 22, in 2023. It's what can happen this week in my neighborhood. And as you've all been saying, again, it's thinking about the one. It's not just like this big, like, of course, we want to pray, God save the UK, but actually more than that, our prayer is, God, would you save my next door neighbor or my cousin who seems to be a bit more open now than they used to be? And that's our prayer, isn't it? And I think that's so much more tangible for us as a church is we go about this week is not to go away and think these, you know, let's start reading the book of Revelation, this, and try and, you know, see which preacher is saying God's about to do this and this. Actually, it's taking the time to say, who in my neighborhood is needy right now and could I show love to? Because they might not, you know, I might not, you know, deliver some porridge oats to them and all of a sudden they say, wow, that's so generous. What must I do to be saved? Like, it's probably not going to happen like that, is it? But it might be that in a year's time, they're like, you know, I'd never spoken to any of my neighbors, and even my own family didn't really talk to me much during coronavirus. But just when you did that shopping for me, I was like, there's something, why? And it intrigued me, and then it could open a door. So maybe God will save our loved ones during coronavirus, but as you've all said, maybe it will happen, and we pray it will happen. As what's the verse? One man plants, another man waters, but it's God who brings the fruit. And whether they say yes, whether they say no, whether they say yes but don't show up, who knows? But God is the one at work. And so this isn't in our ability or how we craft that perfect WhatsApp message or make the flyer look really fancy we put through the letterbox. It's just about us being available and then saying, God, it's over to you to do what only you can do. All right. Well, that's been such a good conversation. I've loved it. And we could have gone on for a lot longer, but we'll cut things off there. And I just want to thank you, Katherine, Tony, and Nemi, for coming on the podcast, and really excited to see what God's going to do in our church in the area of mission. And God bless you. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. See you, everyone.